So, Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries. It's one of the newer entries in a long line of giant robot simulation games that take place within the battletech universe, which was really popular in the 90s, with its peak being Mechwarrior 2, but that was before the dark times, where there was like a 19-year gap between mainline Mechwarrior games because of, well, really complicated IP issues and other things. But somehow after that mess, battletech and its community has slowly started to make a comeback over the years, and one of the games that has helped a little with that is this one. Now, while it does have a few flaws, I still think it makes for a great entry in the Mechwarrior series, though is it the best game to get you into battletech? Well, I've already answered that in another video, but that game was more on the strategic side of things. So what if you're still interested in battletech but crave a more direct way to have giant mechs do spectacularly violent things against each other? Well, I might have just the game for you. It's got all the standard features of blowing up mechs with huge autocannons, lasers and missiles, and on top of that, you'll sort of go on an action-packed history lesson of the battletech universe from 3015 to 3050, and a bit beyond, playing as a mercenary named Giant Mechs as he rebuilds and manages what's left of his father's merc company, while also travelling across the inner sphere, taking on contracts and making a reputation for himself. And while you're doing all that, you'll see news and events that will reshape the galaxy map, some of which you'll get to take part in, which if you're just starting to get into battletech can be quite fun to see. Though this game had a bit of a rough road to get to this point. It's actually a small miracle this game got made at all, as the idea to make it goes all the way back to 2009, when Piranha Games, a small game studio, tried to get funding to make it, but things didn't work out. So in order to get something going with the game rights that they had leased from Microsoft, they pivoted and made a Mechwarrior online game, which had some successes and controversies, but did give Piranha Games a base to work off of to make the game they actually wanted to back in 2009, as all the more modern industrial redesigns and 3D models for the mechs were funded and made in Mechwarrior Online, which later got used in Mechwarrior 5, which is a pretty clever use of limited resources. And they were actually nice enough to share those mech model designs with harebrained schemes so they could use it in their battletech game, which saved them from doing a lot of extra work. That was pretty cool of them. So with a mostly solid base to work from, Piranha Games could finally try and make Mechwarrior 5, and they wanted to go all out, with ideas like being able to travel anywhere on the star map and take contracts where you want, while still having a linear story for players to go through. The combining of both hadn't really been done before in a Mechwarrior game. Also, maybe you can walk around your ship and check out your giant mechs, all of which they did mostly get into the game, though when it came time to launch there was some controversy. Piranha had decided to take an offer from Epic Games for a store exclusivity deal, which made the game unavailable to purchase on Steam or GOG for a year after launch. That did piss off some players, but it did give Piranha, who are a small developer, extra time to work in the game and make launching a lot less riskier for them. Though that was years ago and the game is available on all those stores now. I'm sure some people are still annoyed by it, but it was probably the right call, as even with the extra time they got to work on the game, it was a pretty bare-bone experience on launch. Like, it had a single-player campaign and the open-world contracts, but the game's main story wasn't too strong and the open-world contracts were a bit repetitive and lacked variety. It has solid gameplay, it just needed more things to do to justify this big open star map it has. Also, it didn't help that the main story is a bit of a basic revenge tale, though it does have some interesting bits in it. More on that later though. However, over the years, Piranha Games has released a lot of DLCs that actually fix these issues, like they've added more things to do on this huge star map with more mission types and loads of new planet biomes to fight in. Also, new mechs and more mech variants for the existing lineup in the game's roster with tons of different types of weapons and gear. And most of the DLCs include a mini story campaign for you to go through, some of which are my favorite parts of this game, which, as good as all that is, it is a problem. Like, most games don't need DLCs to feel like a complete experience, and this game really needs those DLCs to feel good. But to be fair, I can understand why the game was developed this way. Piranha had limited resources, so they kinda had to build the game out over time with DLC as they got more funding from sales. They have been pretty consistent over the years with DLCs while keeping them reasonably priced and sold in a bundle with a discount. And the game does go on sale pretty often. So I'm not going to hold the DLC stuff against the game, but I did want to at least mention it so people know what they're getting into. But with that out of the way, let's jump in. Now, starting off, there are two main ways to play this game, career or campaign. Career has no main story, but instead lets you pick a starting location, and if you want to, you can skip ahead to any of the DLC's story missions. Though I do suggest starting with a campaign first. While the story isn't stellar, you do get a really nice rare mech for going through it, and it is a bit more of a guided experience if you're not used to playing this type of game. Plus, once you finish the campaign, you can import your save with all the cool stuff you got in it into a fresh new career. You'll be way overpowered if you do this, but if you're into that, you can have a lot of fun. There is a bit of a learning curve if you're new to this type of game, as movement is pretty different. It's not your standard third or first person controls, like don't think of the mechs as big people but rather huge tanks with legs. So think of the torso as the turret and the legs as the tracks that can move independently of each other. It is quite easy to pick up on how the movement works, and it does give the game a more simulation feel to the combat. You do start in a tutorial in the campaign to give you a feel for it, where Jake's dad will show you the ropes of using weapons and switching between first and third person views.
You know, back when I was your age, I once slammed the hunchback I was piloting right into my instructor's javelin. Oh man, was he pissed.
He's much nicer than the trainer guy I remember from Mechwarrior 2.
Feel free to approach the targets if you find them difficult to hit. Your secret is safe with me. I will not tell a soul of your incompetence. Trust me. In this mission, you may find the optical magnification.
Mason's dad will teach you all the traditional battletech basics, like managing heat from your weapons, aiming at specific parts on the enemy to dismember them and get rid of their dangerous bits or slow them down, and even do headshots to take them out quick, though that's much harder to do. Though while you're going through all of that, there are some nuances the game doesn't tell you about that you can tweak a bit to your liking. Like having throttle decay on or not, weapon cycling, and being aware that aiming torso weapons on your mech will move faster than the weapons on your arms, which is shown with the aiming reticles moving out of sync with each other. It does give a cool military sim feel to the UI. Though you could be lazy like me and press Z on the keyboard and lock the arms with the torso, you lose a tiny bit of speed when aiming and can't aim as high with your arms. But now you don't need to worry about where all your weapons are pointing, and you can toggle Z again if you want to hit something high up. Once you got all the tutorial stuff done, then the game will kick you out of the nest with your dad getting killed. This is when you get introduced to handling the other side of the game, which is managing a small merc company and doing story stuff on the ship. You can also look around and check out your mechs if you want. There's also a crew, though you will only interact with 2 of them. One will be Rihanna, your operations officer. She gives mission briefs and pilots the ship. She's very professional, but it would be nice if she occasionally parked a little closer to some of the objectives. And Fahad, your chief technician, he's the one keeping the mechs running and complaining about it.
You know the phrase cost an arm and a leg? It was made for you make jokes.
I think they wanted to make the ship as much of an immersive experience as they could, as you can interact with a lot of controls and do things, but either because of a lack of budget or running out of time, it ended up being a clunky addition that you don't interact with that often, with a quick fix being a much easier to navigate ship menu screen that you can tab open with all the options instead of interacting with the ship directly. Like out of combat, this menu is what you're going to be looking at 90% of the time. It is nice that you can check out your mechs and stuff. It also would have been cool if there were more ways to interact with the crew and get to know them better, like Harebrained Schemes battletech does, as you only get to know them from the comments they make on missions or when a story mission forces you to go on the ship to chat with them, which is done in an awkward way. You see, you'll spawn in the mech bay, which is fine when you need to chat to Fahad as he's right there, but when you need to talk to Rihanna, you need to walk up the narrowest stairs in gaming to get to her, and most of the chats are with Rihanna. So get used to these stairs, you're gonna get a lot of cardio in. But back to running the company. Starting off, you'll be low on cash and not have any reputation, which you'll need to improve by completing missions in order to get access to better jobs. Higher rep also means you have more negotiating points when accepting contracts, which you can use to get a bigger payout or more salvage for weapons and equipment, or if you have enough points, even entire mechs. You will also have to keep an eye on the rep for different factions you do jobs for and against, as it will go up for the ones you do good work for, but the ones on the receiving end ain't gonna appreciate you so much. You'll get more negotiating points for factions that like you, but if they hate your guts, then contracts with them are not gonna be so lucrative. I'd recommend getting on the Federated Sun's good side at the start of the campaign, as when the Kestrel Lancers story DLCs kick in around 3026, you can get bigger payouts from those story missions. But back to 3015. The first few missions start you on a light mech, a Javelin. It's a solid starter mech, popular with the Federated Suns. It's fast and fairly agile with its jump jets, though as with all light mechs, you'll be one breath away from death if you slow down for a second in it, as there's not much armor on it, and its firepower is a bit lacking for taking on anything bigger than a regular tank, which makes sense as most light mechs are used for scouting and a bit of harassing, or being the peak of urban combat. I don't want those Ubermech fans mad at me again after my slander in the other video. Anyway, you'll move on to medium mechs that have more armor and firepower to have fun with. The first of which will be the Centurion, the unofficial poster boy for the Fed Suns. It's an okay mech and it gets the job done, though it's not really great at anything with its mixed loadout of weapons that does good enough but not amazing damage. It works, so I'm not going to complain. Though if you don't like the loadout of a mech, you can refit them in the mech lab and tweak them how you want, with restrictions of course. Like you can only put certain types and sizes of weapons in specific slots on a mech, But this is where half the fun of the game comes in, as you start thinking up mech loadouts and getting to try them out. The game does keep things pretty basic in the mech lab, where you can just adjust the amount of armor and weapons you put in with some equipment options, which is fine. But if you really want to go in depth with it, there are mods that you can download that let you tweak things all the way down to the engines and type of armor you can install. Though I can understand why this isn't in the base game, as it would probably be too much for people new to the series. Like, the standard mech lab might already look too complicated to some, which it isn't really. You can drag and drop stuff in pretty easy and can get a feel for what works by trying stuff out or looking at guides. But at least the more in-depth stuff is there as a mod if you really want to get into it. With or without mods, you can make some really powerful builds, but we'll get into that a bit later. There was another customization option that got added with the Heroes of the Inner Sphere DLC. Like, if you do cantina jobs which are under the table small contracts that the Mercenary Review Board doesn't need to know about, you'll get a little extra money, equipment, and rep on the side. Also, you will unlock upgrades you can use to give your mechs a little extra boost to their specs. It's an okay system where you do mostly easy stuff while on other contracts, though I'm not a fan of the treasure hunt cantina jobs. It's a little too inconsistent when they appear on missions. The last bit of fun customization you can do with your mechs is make them look cool with custom paint jobs, and even rename your mechs to give them an extra personal touch. Might as well look a little badass while you're out in the battlefield blowing stuff up. Though combat early in the game isn't going to be that bombastic, as it goes at a slow pace since you don't hit as hard in medium mechs and start off doing smaller contracts. But does pick up once you start getting a squad, or as the lingo for battletech refers to it, a lance of mechs together and hiring mech pilots to fill out your ranks. Which you'd think that mech pilots would be a big focus in this type of game, but they are kinda shallow story and gameplay wise. They do have bios and a hint of character with the callouts they make in the middle of battle. Like, the first Mechwarrior you hire is the last survivor of a mission gone bad, where you come in to help and afterwards he asks to join your crew. It's a pretty good way to get you attached to the pilot, but he's the only one where this sort of thing happens, as you'll hire the rest as you travel around and get a few as rewards for missions, and you don't really interact with them outside of fights. Also, the way they level up skills is a basic automatic level up system where the more they do the thing, the better they get at doing the thing. They also have skill caps, which means once they've maxed out and you find someone with a higher skill cap, you'll just fire the lower skilled one and hire the new pilot. And if one of your pilots die in battle, well, you've got spares, so no big deal. Like, the way the game treats them, they felt more like components you need to buy to make a mech run rather than being part of your crew. Well, that was the way pilots used to be for a long time in this game, until the Shadow of Kerensky DLC that gave them traits and let you train them up to increase their skill cap to max. They even threw in some legendary pilots with more powerful traits for you to hire. This does help you get more attached to them, since you need to invest time and money into them to get those maxed out skills and good traits. It is way better than it used to be, but it would be cool if there was some form of interaction outside of combat, like the way Harebrained Schemes Battletech does it with its event choices during travel. They could even attach temporary or permanent traits to the pilots depending on your choices in those events, though that's out of combat stuff. In combat there are still some minor issues with pilots. Okay, so the AI for the pilots in this game don't have the best reputation, and some of it is valid. Like, they do sometimes get stuck on a rock or something and don't follow you like they should. Also, they do get in the way of shots at times and aren't always great at dealing out damage even if you put them in powerful mechs. They are also more likely to lose arms and mechs with valuable weapons on them in combat, so you will be carrying the team on most missions. But to be fair, they aren't completely useless. They do get better as they level up their skills, and you can direct them to focus down a target with squad commands. They'll mostly do okay damage, or at least soften up the enemy for you to finish them off. Plus, at least they are enthusiastic about their job.
Lead us, and let us unleash bloodshed on those in our path.
You can also put them in mechs with ECMs, which jams enemy targeting in an area around them. That will help lessen the amount of damage you and your lance take. They can also be used as a distraction while you get around enemy flanks. Also, being aware of what your lance mates are bad at can help reduce issues with them. Like, if you see one of them is stuck, just press Y and you can switch to their mech and help them get unstuck. And don't put them in mechs with lots of valuable weapons in the arms. They tend to do better with mechs that have maxed out armor and all their weapons in the torso. These aren't ideal solutions, but you'll have a better time if you take them into consideration. Though the pilots have gotten better over time with patches too. So much that they might sometimes surprise you, like I've seen them get headshot kills on more than one occasion. Maybe they have a hidden Idiot Savant perk or something.
What the hell?
But the game does other things fairly well, like the music is pretty good and a few of the tracks did grow on me over time, though they maybe overuse electric guitars just a little too much. But otherwise there is a bit of variety to keep things interesting, and sometimes the music hits just right and makes moments in the game feel great, which will match the tone of these giant mechs having epic duels with each other. Speaking of which, once you get your rep up and have some money to spend, then you can start getting into the fun size mechs, like the heavies. There will be loads to choose from, and it will be a bit random depending on which you'll get first, though there are some legendary mechs that if you see for sale as you travel, I can recommend picking up, like the Orion 0-1P. It's a good workhorse mech, and it's got a decent weapon loadout and enough armor to keep you in a fight. It's also got a bit of interesting lore attached to it, as it's almost the same variant that General Alexander Kerensky piloted during the Star League Civil War, which he eventually won, though it wasn't enough to stop the eventual collapse of the Star League, though his impact on battletech history reshaped the entire inner sphere and beyond. So much that nearly anyone who you come across in the lore that shares his surname, it will usually mean they are a big deal. Like Natasha Kerensky, who also piloted a mech I can recommend, the Warhammer. Though the game embellishes a bit by giving her a legendary custom Warhammer, the WHMBW. It's a souped up version of the standard Warhammer that Natasha Kerensky probably piloted. It's just a little better than the regular Warhammer, which is already a good damage dealing mech. Its armor is average, but if you're taking out other mechs quickly, it won't be a problem. I can understand why they wanted to embellish her mech a little, since she is one of the best, if not the best Mechwarriors in the battletech universe. She also has a really interesting backstory and so many cool nicknames like the First Lady of Death, the Queen of Spades, and of course, the Black Widow. She's one of my favorite characters in battletech, which makes it a little disappointing as they haven't done a DLC or something with her in the game, as the era the game is set in was her prime of kicking ass and taking names. Though they did add another legendary character to the game that's almost as infamous, the Bounty Hunter. He's a pretty fearsome mech pilot, but with a dodgy reputation, which lines up pretty well with the way they put him in the game in a kind of fun and clever way. You see, with the Rise of the Russelhog DLC, they added a merc rival system, so when you take on a contract, if a rival merc company is operating in that area, there's a chance they could ambush you.
It's an ambush! We're ambushing you!
And on the rare occasion team up with them. Now the way the Bounty Hunter comes into this is he'll pay for intel on the mercs you fight, so he can have an advantage if he ever fights them. And he doesn't pay in just cash and rare equipment, but rare mechs too. And he'll give you a little lore about the merc companies you fight against. The way it's done is with his battle pass level up system that gives you something at each level. And once you get to level 10 you get offered a special mission to do with him, which I won't spoil, though the game does a lot of foreshadowing on what to expect on it. The mech rival system is a good addition to the game, but does have a few flaws. Like you can tell most times when a rival is going to pop up on a mission, because during the negotiations the cash reward will be much larger than the other contracts in the system. So it's not really a surprise when they try and ambush you at the beginning of a mission. They do sometimes show up at the end of a job, which if you've had a tough one can be an oh shit moment depending on if the mercs are ranked elite or not. Another flaw is sometimes they'll attack you with a very weak lineup of mechs, like sending a few light mechs against a full lance of medium or even heavy mechs is not the brightest move, but it's the easiest money you'll ever make. The way the system is set up, it does sort of make sense if you throw in the context that each merc company has their own ranking from green to elite, and that they might specialize in fielding certain sizes of mechs, which you can see on the star map. Though some of the merc companies are also portrayed as idiots with big egos, which would also justify them making very bad tactical choices to send weak forces against you.
We're supposed to take out this ragtag band of mercs?
Target awesome.
Not even a challenge.
To be fair though, they do tend to be tougher in the higher level conflict zones, most of the time, and will send a proper force to challenge you on occasion. The bits of banter they do at the start and end of fights with them is also pretty fun. Some will show you respect,
A stunning defeat for us. A supreme victory for you. Well done.
and others will throw a tantrum when you beat them.
That wasn't a fair fight. I'm going to the review board. You'll never work again.
It gives each merc company a little bit of character, which I enjoyed. Though I would have liked to have seen them take things even further, say having merc rival leaders message you outside of combat with either threats or praise, or even request a team up on a job. There is a bit of that in some of the DLC campaigns, like the Kestrel Launcher story will have you team up with the Crater Cobras, and in Solaris Showdown you do a few missions with Hansen's Rough Riders. I would have loved to see more of that in regular contracts on the Star map. Or maybe if you beat a merc rival a few too many times, they send an actual surprise ambush or issue you a challenge in a system where they aren't supposed to be. Like imagine you beat the Wolves Dragoons 3 or more times, then maybe that gets the attention of the Black Widow and she tries to humble you a bit. That would be a fun surprise.
Scaredy cat. Yeah.
Though the way the game is now, it does have a good rhythm to the gameplay, where you go into conflict zones and do a few contracts until the repair bill starts getting a bit too high, or you want to spend your extra cash. So you head to a nearby industrial hub where it's cheaper to repair, and there might be some high-end equipment for you to buy and install better parts in all your mechs. Oh, and sell off spare equipment, especially medium lasers. You get so many they're like the AK-47s of this universe. If you do have enough cash, you could even buy a new or slightly used mech to increase your lineup. And with the Solaris DLC, you can even take part in some arena missions for some extra cash during your downtime, before heading out again for some more contracts. Until eventually you can afford or maybe salvage the biggest mechs in the game, the Assaults, all of which are 80 tons and above. They have the most firepower and armor in the game, but are the slowest. But hey, they may be late to the party, but they always turn heads when they arrive. To me, they are the most fun to pilot, as you can unleash a lot of destruction with them. There is a nice selection for you to choose from in the game, like there's the ever-reliable Battlemaster, who will put on a laser show your enemies won't soon forget. Then there's the immovable mountain of dread that is the Atlas, that can tank almost anything and dish out a decent amount of damage. Or there is the ridiculous firepower of the King Crab, the standard variant of which carries 2 massive AC-20 cannons. You'll run out of ammo for it before you ever get bored of using it. Though my personal favourites would have to be between the Marauder 2 or the Night Star. The standard loadout for the Marauder 2 has some lasers and a pair of regular PPCs, which is nice. It's a solid loadout. But if you replace those PPCs with PPC-Xs, which are like energy shotguns, and put in a binary laser with some medium pulse ones, then throw in as many double heatsinks as you can into it, you can wield a monster that can take on an Atlas head-on and win with sheer firepower. It is a bit of a short range build, but if you close the distance, you will win. The Night Star on the other hand is the opposite of that, with a pair of Gauss rifles, and the battletech universe are one of the most powerful long range weapons, which if you aim carefully with, you can snipe off parts of enemy mechs at a distance, and even go for headshots that are very satisfying to pull off.
That was a precision shot.
There are some of which are called just for fun assault mechs in the game, like the Highlander variant that carries a greatsword as a main weapon. Yes, you can do melee combat in this game, which is fun to mess around with. But it's like that old saying of bringing a knife to a gunfight. Most of the time, if you try and make a melee build work, it's not going to go great. Like, I wouldn't take this Highlander with a greatsword into a serious fight, but if you want to mess around, it can be a lot of fun. And by serious fights, I mean contracts in high-level conflict zones and some story missions. In these, you're going to come up against waves of enemies which have their own assault mechs. The payouts for these contracts are good, but they are risky to do because your assault mechs, if they get badly damaged, are really expensive to repair. So if you have a bad mission, it can wipe out any money you made. They are easier to do now after the Shadow of Kerensky DLC though, which introduced clan tech to the late game, that once you have some, makes the riskier higher level stuff more doable. Though some of the clan contracts you can take in conflict zones are still a bit ridiculous. These won't happen too often, and most of the contracts you'll do will be in the less dangerous conflict zones. The types of contracts you'll take on in these war zones have a bit of variety to them. Like, most missions will be your standard go here, destroy these mechs or buildings, or you'll have to defend an outpost or take part in a battle, which is basically facing waves of enemies until you meet a quota. These are all the simple types of missions that you'll do a lot of. But with a wide mix of biomes and maps they appear on, it does keep things at least visually different and sometimes pleasing to the eye. There are more mission types that have been added over the years, like the infiltration missions that got introduced with the Russell Hague DLC. In these, you sneak behind enemy lines with your Lancer mechs and collect stuff and gather intel while trying not to be spotted. This mission type is there to give a reason to keep light mechs in your roster, since they are the easiest to sneak around with. Infiltrations can be tricky to do with a full Lancer mech since, as I mentioned before, the AI isn't the best. So what I tend to do is just cheese these missions for a little extra money when they come up, as you can easily do them with one light mech and sneak behind enemy lines to collect just one of the objectives, and then head straight to the evac point and get paid nearly the full amount for the contract. There are more engaging mission types than those, like the beachhead ones where you need to capture a base, but there are other objectives on the map that if you do will get you reinforcements to help you out. Though they do feature something I really don't like seeing on missions, which is artillery, as they're annoying to deal with and will constantly harass you. Also, most of the time if you want to destroy them, they are in the furthest corners of the map, so getting rid of them can be a real pain in the arse. I understand them being in beachhead missions since they add a little bit of extra complexity and challenge, but whoever on the dev team decided to let artillery be a thing in defense missions,
You're horrible! You're an irredeemable monster!
the artillery will mostly destroy the buildings you're trying to protect before you get a chance to take them out, on top of you also trying to stop enemy mechs from destroying those buildings too. It's not a great combo. Like, these missions aren't impossible to do, but they're not worth the mental anguish of trying to do them. If you see artillery listed in a defense mission, just skip it. Trust me, it's not worth the reward. There are much better ways to get stacks of C-bills, like multi-mission operations which have you doing a mix of missions right after each other. These will push you to use your full roster of mechs since you won't have much downtime to repair all of them after each mission. The payout is worth it though. Another version of this is high reward quests, which will become available as you get more rep. These also have you doing a mix of missions, though these have small stories attached to them and you can take your time to repair between each mission. Apart from giving you a nice payout and lots of rep, they can also reward you with a legendary mech at the end of the quest, some of which are the best mechs in the game, so well worth doing. And the stories attached to them can sometimes be pretty interesting too. It's mostly nobles backstabbing each other and other great houses shenanigans, with the occasional pirates and rogue factions. They do on rare occasions give you the chance to make choices by picking a side, which is nice for immersion. There are other little things the game does to make it a bit immersive, like there are news stories you can read as the years go by with big events and things happening all around the inner sphere, which is fun to read on occasion if you're getting into the lore of battletech. Though the best way the game does this is with the progression of weapons and mechs in the game, matching up mostly to the lore as you play through this era in battletech. It starts near the end of the Third Succession War, which at this point was when a lot of Star League era tech had been lost because of the near endless wars, and Comstar doing stuff behind the scenes. But slowly lost tech gets rediscovered and starts appearing in mechs you face in missions and becomes more common, to the point that stuff that was rare to find at the start of the game like double heat sinks become pretty common and easy to get. It all adds up to make the game a more immersive experience for me at least. I wish I could say the same thing for the main story, which isn't terrible, but it isn't very compelling at the beginning. The setup at the start of the game is Mason's dad had something this merc company called Black Inferno wanted, and instead of capturing him, they kill him. I don't know what the plan was there. Then Mason and crew get some help from a guy called Spears, who's a little shady but otherwise trustworthy. He's voiced by Elias Tufexis, aka Adam Jensen. He also voiced another character in Harebrained Schemes Battletech, and is apparently a big fan of the Battletech universe. Nice. He does get a couple of good lines in the game, especially a classic one in the Shadow Kerensky DLC that's a reference to Mechwarrior 2 Mercs. Anyway, Spears helps you set up a new merc company that Mason builds up to help find out why those mercs from Black Inferno wanted his dad. At this point the game opens up and you can start doing other missions on this huge star map. The problem is the main story missions kinda do a breadcrumb approach to revealing things that's just a little too slow. And it's not great at making you want to get to the next story mission, so you might forget about the main story for a bit while doing other contracts and side quests. It's kind of the opposite problem from Harebrained Schemes Battletech game, where you just want to keep doing story missions, but might be underleveled since you haven't done enough open world contracts. Also, the game doesn't do a great job of building up its antagonists, since after the attack on Mason's dad, Black Inferno pretty much leave you alone and go do their own thing until you go after them. It might have been a bit more interesting for them to track down Mason and ambush him a few times in other contracts after you've leveled up a bit. Just to remind you about the main story. Like, they could use the excuse that maybe Black Inferno thinks Mason knows something about what his dad was hiding, and you could even have them trying to bait Mason into fighting them by sending messages to him. Because the way it's actually done in the story is underwhelming, as Rihanna basically points to a hologram and says, "That guy killed your dad, so feel angry." Oh, and another guy was in charge of that guy, so you should probably be mad at him too, which isn't the best way to get you to care about the story. It does start to get interesting once you get to the middle of the story. Once you find out that Comstar, one of the most powerful and notorious factions in the history of Battletech, were the ones gunning for Mason's dad. You also find out Mason's father was spying for a group or someone outside the inner sphere. I wonder who. Another part of the mystery is decoding a series of coordinates, which maybe also gets dragged out a little too long, for not much payoff. I mean, you do get the Nightstar mech, but story-wise there isn't much. Like, you do a pretty hard last mission holding out against heavy Comstar forces, with Rihanna downloading stuff from a memory core in an underground base with strange markings on it, which should be a big deal. Like, memory cores usually contain knowledge and lost tech from the Star League era, which can be a civilization-wide tech level upgrade depending on what's in it. But the game ends with, oh, we still need to figure out the data from this memory core, and that strange insignia on the base. Hey, I wonder what that means, and what connection does it have with Mason's dad? Like, maybe to someone who has had zero exposure or knowledge to Battletech, Battletech, this might be a mystery, but if you know even a little bit about it, this is like trying to be vague about who Luke Skywalker's dad is. Which I'm trying to say, it's not a strong ending to the story, like it's starting to get to the good bits and then it just stops. With a vibe like, we'll maybe finish this up properly later with a DLC or sequel. Like I don't feel ripped off with this ending, it just feels anticlimactic. That was until we got the Shadow of Kerensky DLC, which carries on where this story left off, and shows off one of the biggest events in Battletech history, the clan invasion. The DLC is really good, it adds a lot with tons of new mechs, new weapons and equipment that is so good you'll pick max salvage on every story mission you play in it. And Piranha were kinda clever again because they got to reuse some of the stuff they made for Mechwarrior 5 clans and put it into mercs. And it mostly works, though the cockpit glass looks like it was painted on, which would be fine if this was the tabletop, but compared to the other mechs in the game they maybe need to work on that. But back to the good stuff. The DLC also kinda adds a late game as all the new clan stuff only appears past the year 3050, which used to be the max for anything new appearing in the game, where you could go into some high level conflict zones for a challenge, but that was about it. Now there are clan invasion corridors you can go and fight in to try your luck at getting all their really great salvage. And on the story side of things, they've upgraded the character models for the main cast and made high quality cutscenes for this DLC story, which are a step above the ones in previous DLCs. It's one of the best, if not the best DLC story campaigns in the game. It's also got fun little nods to older Battletech stuff, like the news reports referencing the Somerset strikers. Those made me smile.
It's like the Major always says.
Information is ammunition.
And the main thing this DLC story does is give a better resolution to the main story while still hinting at maybe future stuff. I do, however, have slightly mixed feelings about the game needing a DLC to have a better ending to the main story. But with all the extra stuff it adds and it not being overly priced, it's a fair compromise, I guess. And since we're talking about the DLCs, what about the other one's stories? How would I rate them? Starting off, they all have better pacing than the main story since they are more linear once you begin them. Some I liked more than others, like Kestrel Lancers I really enjoyed. It gives a bit of a taste of what it's like fighting for one of the great houses and just how ridiculous their wedding presents can be.
In honor of our marriage, I give you a vast prize. The Capellan Confederation.
Rise of Rosselhaig is an underdog story, though it didn't really grip me. It felt at times just like open world missions with a bit of story thrown in, but it does have some good bits, like there's a King Crab jump scare in there. Dragon's Gambit has you fighting for everyone's favourite, the Draconis Combine, because Comstar forces you into it. It is a fun story to play through with a nice variety of missions, and it has some pretty cool battles that will challenge you a bit. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Solara's Showdown story, on the other hand, doesn't take itself too seriously and has some good humour in it, featuring the man, the myth, the legend, Duncan Fisher, as you fight in a tournament as cover for you stopping an assassination attempt. The rewards for the story missions are pretty good too. With each of these small campaigns, you can see the devs getting better and better at making story missions, with the current peak being Shadow of Kerensky. And now if they want to, they can push things forward, though the cast of characters might need to be changed or aged up since the game's story has taken place over 35 plus years. But maybe people don't age the same in Battletech. Not sure on the law about that. The devs have gotten pretty good at making these story DLCs, so if they make more, I would look forward to seeing what's next. For a game that's been a work in progress for a long while, it does now feel like a more complete package with all the things that have been added over the years, and I think it's fairly priced for where it's at since they don't try and nickel and dime players with all the DLC the game has now. So while not being in my opinion the best game to get you into Battletech, and taking a while to get into a good spot, it is now a much closer second choice that I can recommend you giving a go if you want more Battletech and Giant Mechs in your game library. I also hope they keep adding stuff to the game since they keep getting better at making the DLCs for it, and if they do make more and this video does okay, maybe I'll cover that too. Anyway, that's a wrap on another video. If you made it to the end, thanks for sticking around, I appreciate it. And thanks again for all the nice comments on my other videos, it helps motivate me to keep making them. If you want to go the extra mile, you can also throw a like or sub my way. And if you're feeling really generous and enjoy the videos I make, you can support the channel on Patreon, where you can get updates on videos and some other stuff. But again, thanks for watching, see you next time.